Truth is that you know it's all on you. You know you get to choose, yeah. So what you gonna do? Because it's all on you. Take it to your purpose.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. And today we are going to get into the PR perspective. Listen, there's a lot going on right now in the culture, in the headlines, and we are going to dive into all of it from a PR perspective. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of these hot topics. Miss Tiffany, what is on your mind?
Ooh, thank you for having us, Tonya. I'm so excited to be here with you ladies. There's a lot always on our minds, which is why, we're so quick to assemble and get these thoughts out. But recently, the Victoria's Secret fashion show just aired. It just made its return after a bit of a hiatus. And you and I talked a bit offline about the history of Victoria's Secret and what this quote unquote rebrand, was meant to be for them. Historically, Victoria's Secret has been very, very, very on the spectrum of upholding the traditional beauty standard and the fashion standard of only having, size 00 models, really having, a background that is not inclusive by any means. What you really see in the fashion shows have always been kind of like the pinnacle of beauty in a European standard, but has not been representative of the culture of society around us. They've kind of been stuck in that 90s supermodel, stereotype, if you will. And so they've come back with their newly revamped fashion show that is meant to be more inclusive. But where is the story? What is the intention behind it? Why now? There are so many questions that we have about this. And I'd like to really, really, of course, highlight our fave, Robin Rihanna Fenty, who is been at the forefront of, making sure inclusivity is in these conversations. Think about what she's done with, Fenty Beauty and the fact that she's had all these different shades. And that was the first time, in the market that you've seen something that she's really disrupting the market when it comes to inclusivity. And she's done the same with even, her Savage Fenty line. And her shows have been completely disruptive in the fact that it's a fresh take on what the Victoria Fashion Show has been in the past. And so now we live in 2024 where we want to see more sizes, more shades, more ethnicities, more sexualities represented in the show. Victoria's Secret just said, hey, it's our time to do that, but we don't really know why. I mean, they want us to kind of give them kudos. They've had, 2 trans models in the show this year. They've shown, plus size models this year. They've really tried to tell us that they're not who they used to be. But I'm just trying to figure out where this all came from and why, besides the fact that they just think that they should. What do you guys thoughts?
Brandi, what are your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts, as always. But, I have to, piggyback off of Tiffany in this, that there's been a lot of controversy that has surrounded Victoria's Secret, as well as the fashion show, right, in terms of inclusivity. The past, I believe, chairman that was leading the organizations for decades made it very, very clear that there were certain things that were never going to be acceptable with Victoria's Secrets, right? So of those was that there would never be a trans model featured there. There would never be larger or more diverse sizes in terms of the brand. It would never be represented. And that was part of the company culture at that time. But while I do agree that, there's a lot of questions around why now, I do think that this brings about another part of this conversation of, can people truly be canceled, right? Is there room for redemption? Is there an opportunity for, look, we've learned our lesson. This is what we're doing and the steps we're taking to improve upon where we were is not where we are now. I think there is. And I think that might answer the question of why now, right? this is after, so much has happened in terms of DEI. There's been a lot of rollbacks that have happened with DEI, and it's almost been kind of, I don't know, in a fog a bit of what do we do now that these things have happened. Do we continue to implement these things when organizations are actively pretty much doing away with all of the progress and work that was implemented for this past 4 years? So I think that just looking at it overall, I personally was excited to see the fashion show. I was excited to see that 2 trans models were featured there, where knowing about the history and how the leadership was in the past, that they made that point to say, look, this is why we're going to be different and why it's necessary now. And I'm looking forward personally to just seeing what they will do in the future with the information that they have now. It's going to take some time. There was some backlash with it. People kind of question, again, why are we doing this now? But I think a lot of that has to do with we've grown up. We've acknowledged our mistakes and we want you to accept us, but this is what we're doing now to show that we actually do care and that we want to be a part of your shopping experience. So that's kind of what I thought about it. I was excited to see it. I was happy to see that they've made some progress. Still some work to do, but the fact that there is some effort being made keep in mind, while many organizations are actively firing, letting go of DEI representatives, leaders, programs across the board, across the country. We're seeing that, and we have been for the past, I'd say, 6 months to a year. The fact that they're doing this now, I feel like that should actually speak volumes that they didn't do it when it was a trend, right? And when it was a buzzword, but they did it at a time where it's actually not the thing right now, right? And it's actually being rolled back. They made it the initiative to say that this is what we want to do and this is how we want to launch.
A couple of points, Brandi. I think you are spot on. I'm just concerned. I wouldn't say concerned, but the too big to fail situation, which leaves the consumer with a lot less leverage. And I do think companies at some point, they do become too big to fail. Like, is there really such thing as cancel culture? Because we can look back on a lot of different companies that have done things wrong that are still around. H&M. So, there's that. But also, they still have a communication problem. How they are communicating to their consumer still needs work. There was many of us that didn't even know that the fashion show was coming back until like the day of. This is something we used to get excited about. We used to want to see, especially knowing, and I don't even know how the marketing went. Did they even advertise that Tyra would be coming back out? Because I think that was a big draw for a lot of people. Is Tyra showing back up and showing herself and all her voluptuousness now, which is also a backtrack of what her brand used to represent, some things that she has said. So I think their biggest issue is still communicating messages, communicating that they've changed or how their story has veered. A lot of times companies will come back out and at least have new management, new leadership. They've kept the same thing, same bad behavior when it comes to communicating, but they've changed their actions, which is good. So it's still a little shaky when you look at it. It would be great if they had a little more seamlessness going on with their message, their story, their pivot, and that their marketing, I don't know, I didn't even know what was coming on.
Yeah. I wanted to see more. I wanted
Yeah.
to see more with the rollout, because it's like, they announced it, but especially after having like that was a 6-year hiatus. Like you said, Tyra, there's probably some things that, of course, like we said, not everybody saw, but that's kind of the point of what we're talking about here is how are you getting that message out in like experiential and press and marketing and advertising? Like, I feel like they could have done a good job of telling a better story and leading up to the why now. We know why now. It's because everybody was really pissed at what Victoria's Secret used to stand for, and now again you're living in a world where we see that inclusivity all the time. We see how there was such a huge shift to Savage X Fenty again, which was like a direct competitor, and people were like, I actually see myself represented in this brand. So sometimes it feels to me when brands do this, it feels a little, it teeters the performative line. Like I'm kind of like you, Brandi, where like I'm happy it's happening because at least it's happening. At least they didn't just throw in the towel. But I also just want to see more as to like what they've done to correct this, a little bit of a story around what they're doing, maybe even internally as a company, to correct the image that they've had and how they've made women feel about their bodies for years. That's a lot of damage to undo.
Mm-hmm.
And Tiff, you're an LA girl, so just to veer a little bit, how do you feel about Tyra's transition? Because there was a time where she would kind of fat shame people.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing. I mean, I saw a lot of backlash, and me and Tyra were Inglewood girlies. So Tyra's my girl. I think everything, again, it always comes back to how you're telling these stories, and which way you're popping back up. But I will say, to see Tyra on the runway, it got me very excited. But I do see why people really didn't buy it, and kind of felt like she was being kind of hypocritical based on what she used to be. I am gonna just say, not that Tyra did a lot of things that were not okay, especially in the top model days. There's a lot of things that did not age very well. But I'm glad to see that her even being there is still representation. And I think that there's a lot of things from that era that did not age well. A lot of things from the early 2000s, the 90s, early 2000s that did not age well. You see every few months, like a America's Next Top Model clip goes viral, and it's really, really cringy. But I think that, today she has done interviews. She has spoken out about, how she feels in modern day and what she wants to leave as her legacy as a model. And so as long as she stands by that, Tyra's still my girl.
Well, hitting them big numbers, I was proud to see her up there myself, to see her kind of fight ageism too in the industry. So I thought that was beautiful.
Me too.
Amore, any thoughts on Victoria's Secrets and all that they have going on?
Let's say it was a fashion show that should have never happened.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. I really didn't know that it was happening. Until maybe 3 weeks before. And I was just like, okay, Victoria's Secret fashion show. All right. But you saw the reviews, you saw what people said about it. But I think in terms of why now, I think it's probably an opportunity for them to sort of revive or re-enter the fashion conversation. And there's the whole DEI thing. And maybe it's sort of like a rebranding that I'm thinking of. But I don't think it's going so well, as Tiffany mentioned, about the strategy and the story and how it was just like all of a sudden, I didn't hear about Victoria's Secret for years. And then the next day it was like, there's the Victoria's Secret fashion show. I was like, okay. But for me, I think it's just an opportunity for them to sort of re-enter the conversation. And that's why I think, they're doing it. And the fashion show was a great way to come back, right? Maybe that's the best way that they thought of how it should be done. But I didn't think it was successful at all. I did see the show, and like I said, it was the show that should have never happened. I do love Victoria's Secret. I love Victoria's Secret. I love Tyra Banks. But I was just like, what is this? That was my whole take. Not too much.
Not too much. And I have to say, just while we're here, I'm hoping, because for those of you who did, if you saw it, you might have noticed it was like a lot more low budge than the past shows. I'm really hoping maybe some of that budget went to paying trans and Black and, paying some of the talent that was there that deserved to be there, and the Tyra Banks budget, or spending some money internally on this rebrand. How are we actually extending the sizes? Because, baby, the glitz and the glamour of what used to be the Victoria's Secret fashion show, it was not there. You saw her heel literally got stuck on the floor. Like, that was not properly, secured. The glam, like there was no big hair, the wings, that's like really what we're here for, the wings and the beauty. And there's the women,
and the halos.
The halos, right? Everybody was stunning. everybody was stunning. It was just that the production was not what it used to be.
Well, I was looking for the $1 million bra. What happened to that? I'm always excited to see the bra, and we didn't even see the bra.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my goodness.
Exactly.
You know, between the lack of promotion, the lack of marketing and real communication strategy, like all of the things just check so many boxes in my mind of, you know what, there's so many things that were missed in this. And it could have been huge, huge leverage opportunity to really say, we're back and we're better and better than ever, better than you could have expected, better than what we did in the past. This is what we're going to bring it to you. There was so much opportunity for this moment to be their moment. And it was just like, fizzle.
You know, and to be honest, when Tyra came out, I don't know, the outfit, I was like, well, maybe because I was like, maybe because it's almost Halloween. That's what I thought about the outfit. I'm not, you know, I'm just being honest. When I saw the outfit, I was just like, what is this? Maybe because it's we were closer to Halloween. Maybe that's why that was the choice for the outfit. Otherwise than that, I just thought it was again,
didn't fit the aesthetic.
It did not. It did not.
Yeah.
And I love Tyra. She got a little bit more voluptuous. She looks good.
Oh, she looks great. I did have. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, this a little different, but also like, you know, maybe
she's 50 now, right? So
that we didn't know.
Bodies change.
I think we can just go back to what Tiffany said from the beginning. Yeah. Kudos to Rihanna for lighting a fire under their ass, because that's what happened.
True.
That's what this is.
That's what happened. She shook it up a little bit, and
a little bit, yes.
That and the girls are pulling receipts. I love my Tyra too. But the way they pulled up them receipts on Tyra, they're like, it's interesting that you're wearing leggings when back in 2001, that was unacceptable. In fact, that would get you canceled.
All the way.
On your stage, all the way. The way. Oh, goodness gracious.
I hold my breath whenever those receipts come up. I'm like, ooh, Tyra, baby. It's not aging well. It's not.
And it's the video. It's not just the text either. It's not just what you said. They will pull out the video of when she said, time stamped and everything. Of just how, and it's not funny, but it is.
No, it's hilarious.
Of how cringy we were in the early 2000s in terms of image, in terms of promotion and things like that. Just the way we were was just, it was very, just almost like elitist in many ways. All of this inclusivity, it would not have been a thing at that time because it wasn't inclusive where you're either going to fit this model or you're just not. And thankfully, we've grown from that. But to see some of the things that we used to just cater to, it's just like, oh my goodness.
And now we have BBLs. Yeah. Oh joy.
Well, that moment.
I'm not ready for y'all today.
Yeah, it will. It's all on video, so it will be around.
The receipts keep coming. So, Miss Brandi, let's talk about Kayla Nicole's podcast interview.
Absolutely.
Update the people.
Yes. So Kayla Nicole, for those of you that aren't aware, most notably was Travis Kelce's girlfriend or ex-girlfriend now. But she actually is a recognized sports broadcaster and worked with ESPN, was a sideline reporter for NFL games, basketball courtside games, you name it. So she's actually very notable within the space in journalism. But unfortunately, you know, with celebrity, it kind of comes with the attachment, right? So recently she did an interview on a podcast show, actually with Angel Reese, and shared some insight into her relationship, and a comment that she made during this interview set the internet ablaze. Basically, and in short, what she said was that the craziest thing that she did for a relationship or in a past relationship after she was broken up with, she dressed as the ex-boyfriend's, I guess, new girlfriend to just kind of throw a little jab and a little dig into it. So speed up to now, she shares that interview just a little over a week ago, sets the internet ablaze because people, as we mentioned before, receipts, those receipts matter. And they brought up receipts and were able to quickly connect the dots of who she was talking about, who ended up being Tiana Taylor, who's another recognized and really respected singer, dancer, and overall professional in the entertainment industry. And because of the backlash that she received from this interview, she ended up coming out in another interview and basically apologizing. And one thing that stuck out to me the most in this statement and her response to all of the backlash was not only the apology and a little bit of tears, but also the fact that she mentions that, you know, PR training and media goes a long way. And I really should have taken that advice. You think?
We love to hear it.
We love to hear it. We hate you being in crisis, but sweetie, that's why we have PR training. That's why we have media training, for this exact reason. You never know where you're going to be placed in these situations, but you do know how to properly prepare yourself and how you respond to the questions. It's all fun and games when you're getting exciting questions, really quirky questions, and even slightly controversial questions. But we all have to be cognizant of how that can be perceived. You might be in a space of you and another individual while you're interviewing with them, and it's kind of fun and it's a good time. But you also have to be very cognizant of the fact that it's not just you. It's going to be, in fact, displayed into potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of viewers, and they're going to be interpreting things on their own. So you're giving them the content. You got to be cognizant of the content that you share.
Yeah, I think especially right now, I mean, she's been in the public eye for quite some time, but I would also say right now specifically, if I was her publicist and she's, the ex of an athlete who's, in a, one half of this superstar relationship right now that everyone's obsessing over with Taylor Swift, there's a lot of treading there because, again, people like to bring up receipts. And once you get yapping, people want to twist and turn anything that you say and turn it into making it about now Taylor Swift. And maybe it wasn't at all. And so all these experiences, again, because they were able to kind of like sleuth and put two and two together, it just kind of makes this snowball of more mistakes happening. But I think especially really leaning into that media training and really being selective with your words while you're under such a spotlight, like such a super spotlight right now, where everybody's just talking about this relationship. They're constantly entering her into the conversation unprovoked. So she really has to be careful of what goes on there with her interviews.
I think this reminds me of, and we're going to get into Vice President Kamala Harris's tour, but she has had a very soft landing. People have been very kind to her. She's likable. The girl's likable. She's beautiful. So I don't think that she's ever really had a situation that was contentious. And sometimes when you start talking about stuff, if you haven't had contentious situations, you don't realize that everybody don't like you. And somebody that don't like you will take your words and make you eat them. And I think she's found herself in a situation that she didn't realize was coming or that was even possible. There's what they call it. Beauty is the gift and the curse, especially in TV. It's like, she's a beautiful girl. She's had a great relationship. She's likable. So the negativity hasn't really been something she's had to deal with. And now she's just staring it in the face like, okay, what do I do now?
The internet is swift too. Literally within 3 days. I'm so sorry, Tiffany.
Oh, no.
But literally within 3 days, I think that's when she was on another interview, basically apologizing for her statement, what she said, apologizing to Tiana Taylor. I mean, the list goes on. It was almost an apology tour, like round the clock within 72-hour window of this statement. So, that's the thing that I always go back to is this is why that training is so important. And leaning into that training is so important because you have to be prepared for those types of questions that may not be presented to you as a potential negative, but it could have those connotations associated with it based on how you respond to it. The best way that I think she should have responded to it is, you know what? Sometimes you got to keep it a secret, right? Don't kiss and don't tell. I like to keep my relationships private. She could have made it fun. She could have made it quirky, rather than giving that little nugget for people to bite on and basically take it from there and gather those receipts and ultimately call her out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that reminds me of, in one of the clips that she said in her apology tour of saying, I don't know why people have it out for me. Like, it seems like the internet just kind of like took this and ran. I have no idea why they were like coming for me. And the mentality should be, honestly, when you're in the public light, like, people are probably going to come for you. I think that's like just to kind of add on to what you were saying, Tonya, about her not really expecting this to happen. But also, yeah, I think I couldn't agree more, Brandi. There's kind of like cute, quippy ways to kind of address it without, having to go in too deep. She possibly could have alluded to the fact that, like, yeah, girl, I was putting my business out there a little bit, and, I'm going to keep it cute. But I want to give people another reminder just about media training in general. That it wasn't completely the case in this situation, but whenever you are speaking to somebody, somebody on a podcast, the media in general, anything you say is up for grabs. Of course, you could say off the record, but you do have to expect that when you're on, anything can really be used. So you have to just have the mentality of anything I say is going to be fair game for people to then use and twist and put it out however they'd like to. So just in general, come ready with your points, have a good time. Don't be too stiff, definitely engage in some conversation. But sometimes we like to chat. Sometimes you feel comfortable and you just have to kind of remember where you are and where that can be used.
Tiff, sometimes I think people will say things because they want the smoke. They think they want it until they get it. Like, you think you're ready for it. You think it's funny. You think this is cute. Not really recognizing how far that could actually go. And you have no control of the narrative, how it's perceived by other people. So I think I told you before, I had a client that asked me to do something crazy. Like, she has a book. She was like, oh, I want to get it on the banned book list so it could get some attention. And I was like, that's actually not how this works, but okay. So listening to her when she started running her mouth, I was like, I don't think she ready. Like, but okay, if that's what you want. Like, a Draymond Green will say something that could either be funny or it could be incredibly controversial. And depending on who is perceiving it, it could be both. But he knows that going in. He's like, I'm ready for the smoke. And he handles it every time. I just don't think that everyone that gets mesmerized, I guess, or hypnotized by the social media train that can take off, they don't recognize, they don't get to control which direction it goes. Like, you have these high hopes. This will be a great clip. This will be funny and cute, and they'll look at, no, ma'am, you don't get to control that, because once it's out there, it's ours to use however we want, and you don't get that. So I really wish people would recognize that. Like, once you put something out there, you do not get to control how it is perceived and handled, especially if, people don't really know you. Like, some people are just now getting to know her. It's not like she has an established personal brand, just those people that are in her circle. And a lot of people don't understand. If you don't have a strong brand, personal brand, people will perceive you how best it fits them.
Very true.
That's exactly
not even gonna lie. It took me some time to look up her information just to find out that she actually had a background in sports journalism. I was impressed by her background, but just based on the headlines and based on the news that she has been attached to in the last, I'd say, 3 years, you would never know that she was very active in sports broadcasts. So, that just kind of speaks to your point and how much that personal branding is a factor in all of this. And you have to really be actively working towards and consistently building towards your personal brand so that people can get to know you. So when things like this do come up, you're going to have an army defending you as opposed to an army coming after you online. Yeah. It's all fun and games until you have thousands of people in your comments going after you because of a small little clip and statement that you said that was taken out of context. It happens to many people.
Absolutely.
And
Amore?
it gives us content for these types of panels to talk about it.
I did not, sadly, I didn't follow her very much. So I only saw like a couple of clips on like TikTok and something about her mom crying or it hurt her mom, something like that. But I do think that based on what I'm hearing and the personal brand thing, sometimes they're not even thinking about what that is. They don't necessarily know. So And then if there's no PR person or communications person that's helping to work with them for that particular strategy, et cetera, they're just saying whatever. And this is just something that I hope that there'll be a lesson learned from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into VP Harris's media tour. Like, hello, Tiffany.
Well, they were begging her to do press, and she hit them hard with with this press tour, which I think we talked about this a little bit in a previous discussion, Tonya. But we knew that they were strategic about it. Of course, there's a bunch of professionals who are planning these activities, but I want to talk about one that really caught my attention. That was kind of one of the first interviews on this leg of her press tour that caused a lot of commotion, which was VP Harris on the Call Her Daddy podcast, which, in my opinion, if you understand media, you know that this was brilliant. If you understand audiences, if you understand who she's trying to get her message to, if you understand new media, you know that this made a lot of sense. That, her campaign had a mixture of new media, traditional media, the heavy hitters like The View, Howard Stern, and then things like, Charlemagne the God and podcasts like Call Her Daddy, which Alex Cooper had originally just, secured one of the biggest, deals with Spotify, having Call Her Daddy exclusively on the platform. So this is a major show to, come to. Alex Cooper is 30 years old. And the audience demographics, actually, this is directly from NPR, the audience data, reaches 70% women, 76% are under 35, 93% under 45. Their audience skews 48% Democratic, 24% Republican, and 20% Independent. About 34% live in the South, 24% in the West, 22 Northeast, and 20 Midwest. So just looking at that and thinking about who she's trying to get her message out to, and thinking about the important topic of women's issues, especially women's access to healthcare, it's a no-brainer that she would go on Call Her Daddy. I think she did a fabulous interview on Call Her Daddy. I liked the thing that I think was probably the most standout to me is that she got to talk about women's issues for about 45 minutes without being interrupted. That alone. And I think one thing that was really cool about that interview is that not only did they get into talking about things like, of course, like abortion rights and just like access to care, but just talking about like, the experience of being a woman. Alex Cooper in her intro even said to, the audience, like, hey, I was trying to think about how I was going to do this interview. I'm not, we could have talked about fracking. We could have talked about the economy. That's not my area, and I know it. I have a obligation to speak to women. And so she asked the VP about, her mother and her upbringing and other women in her life and these issues. And I think it was a really organic way to start this conversation. A lot of the backlash came from people thinking that like she's kind of pandering to a younger generation, but in actuality, she's reaching a whole lot of people, whether they agree or don't agree with, VP Harris's politics. There's a lot of really solid information, and there's a lot of undecided people out there who might have heard that, and it could have given them a really great perspective that you're not getting from other platforms. So I wanted to start there. I know there's like a ton of other interviews that she's done, but I wanted to pass it to somebody else to maybe bring up one of their favorites.
Well, real quick, I did want to point out, I have been saying, at least for the last 2 years, that podcasts are the new media. It is the new place that people go to for information because mainstream media just ain't cutting it right now. So the fact that she decided to cut out a lot of mainstream media news outlets, which pissed them off as, past the Mississippi River, they were just hot like fish grease. And she did her own thing. And I think that because she did, regardless of age, there are so many people now that do not go to mainstream for their news. So that definitely gave her an opportunity to reach people that just don't watch Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or BCC. It is about reaching people where they are. And that is one of our biggest lessons to our clients. So I also think that she has on this tour, I just want to say this, I'm gonna let this go. You can also see how she has been having some media training from the beginning of the media tour to the end, because some of her answers have changed. So what that means, people out there, is that someone is fine tuning her message as she's continuing along on this tour. That is something we highly recommend. And she said it the other day. She stays on message because what? That's what professionals do.
You're
So
welcome.
from a PR perspective, I think she has completely nailed it because it's so non-traditional, and it's the things that we try to teach all the time that people look at us as kind of an abstract thing, but literally this is how you get better at what you are doing professionally. Is you have someone help you hone your message, you stick to the message, you don't weave, and you continuously improve your communication to your audience. And right now, her audience is anyone that has not voted. So I think, I just think she nailed it. I think she nailed it. Amore?
Yeah, well, for me, it was, you didn't see VP Harris, and then all of a sudden there she was, on a lot of different platforms. But I do think that the platforms should be sort of a mixture, whether it's Democrat, Republican, or conservative, liberal, just more of a mix in terms of the platforms that she goes on. And then speaking of, you were just mentioning about her, the staying on message, etc. For me, when I ask a question, I just want a direct answer. And I think there's a lot of times where she will answer, and then sometimes I feel like I'm just hearing the same story, middle class family type of thing. So that's my only thing. But I'm glad to see that she's doing a lot more interviews, as she should. And I'm just waiting to see what happens in November. But I do think that, when a question's asked, if I ask you 1 and 1, what's 1 plus 1? Just tell me 2. I don't want you to tell me about, how math got started and what you did when you were in 5th grade, about, how you learned about math. No, and the reason why I say that, not to criticize her, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to lead, you need to be decisive. You need to be like, whatever they asked you, just give them an answer. You're prepared, you're ready. And I feel like when she doesn't get straight to it, to me, it goes like, okay, can she lead or not? Not that I'm doubting that, but I'm just saying, just answer it the way, the normal people that she's going to be interacting with would answer. But I just like to see more of a direct answer, because I'm one who always tell my clients, you only answer the question that's asked, right? Whatever you're being asked during an interview, you answer that. No, nothing more, nothing less, because it can then kind of throw the interview off, throw off the timing, etc. And I think that the people who are watching, that's supporting her, or whether they're not supporting her, it can kind of throw people off a little bit. That's just how I see it.
Ms. Sims?
Yeah. I mean, both really good points there. And just the perspective of how the press tour has come along. But definitely I want to add to that just based on my experience working with political figures, I've worked on numerous campaigns over the last 5 years. One thing that I have noticed and gathered from working with these politicians is that they all have this idea in mind that you don't answer the question that's being asked, but you actually take it and you create your own response to it, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So what we're teaching them is the polar opposite of what they are actually teaching themselves, or in conversation, or how they start to build their political careers. But that is something that I have observed just in my work with politicians, is that they believe in just kind of creating a story, essentially. And we see how that can be perceived because of obviously the work that we do in communications and the strategy and the focus behind it, but how that can be, I guess, confused in the messaging. It can be confusing to the audience, the person that's actually engaging with you, and how it could be ultimately kind of problematic, because that has been a statement shared multiple times, is that she can never answer the question. It's always a story with the question, or it's something else with the question, right? But in her own way, she's answering it, but it very much gives politician speak, I'll call it. Okay, I'm making up new words as I go today. It's something that I noticed with them. But yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of just the topic here at hand, I've been really happy to see her in her press tour. One of the initial concerns about her was that, how is she going to relate to people? She's not relatable to people. She comes across a little bit distant. So the fact that she did choose to include podcasts into her press plan, I think was pretty awesome. It shows that she is engaged to her audience. She understands that she's going to be tapping into multiple different types of audiences, and they're going to expect different things from her. So thus, you need to adapt yourself to reach that person. The typical voter isn't the 40 plus. There's some under 30. There's this demographic, this ethnic background. There's so much to it that you have to be aware of, and making sure that you are tapping into that audience and meeting them where they're at, is what I like to say. Meeting them exactly where they're at, which are going to be in untraditional environments and spaces. But I will definitely say that probably one of my favorite interviews that I've seen from her thus far is going to be the Fox News interview. Yes. I was waiting on this interview. I was excited for this interview. I knew she was going to kill it, but to see it just kind of as it is, it was totally what I would have expected from it. She held her composure very well. Only very little did she kind of come out of character, I guess you could say. But it was rightfully so. We always try to train our clients and just really prepare them for those tough questions where, try not to let your emotions get involved in it and get invested in it. But it is hard when you have somebody that is interrupting you in the interview, and then the fact that information clips that were shared during that interview, come to find out, it's actually was false. So she was actually spot on in correcting him right then and there in real time, mind you. But doing that, it can come across a certain way. But in the same vein, I have to say, listen, people do respect emotion, because we are people, we're not robots. So we get it. We understand. We don't like it when people are interrupting us. We don't like when people are cutting us off. And we definitely don't like people presenting false information and telling us it's the real deal. Absolutely not. And not on my watch. And I think she presented that very well. She definitely showcased herself as the leader that this country needs. And yeah, I was very happy with what I saw, but it was just a classic example of this is how you handle not only a tough question, but also when you're having to deal with an interviewer that may not be, I'm going to be careful with my words in this, may not be as professional. Experienced, I'm sure he is, but may not be professional in handling real conversations and real interviewing, because that's one of the basic things that you learn. You don't interrupt your speaker. You let them speak, let them get their word out, let them say what they need to say, and then you present whatever information you need to. The constant cutting off, the constant presenting of misinformation, I think was just kind of, it speaks to a larger issue around women in leadership and being respected in their space. And just kind of piggybacking off of that, I think it just influences that conversation even more about why it's such an issue and why it's clearly still prevalent that even today in a Fox News interview that we have VP Harris running for president, it's still being cut off and still being diminished as no one in this conversation. So, yeah.
As a Bay Area native, I would like to say I was very proud on how she did not let him gaslight her and handled herself like the boss that she is running to be. So, with that being said, real quick, I'm guessing you've seen, or maybe not, Chris Brown has sold out all his concerts in the United States. He's going overseas to South Africa, and a women's rights group has decided they want to petition to keep him from coming to South Africa. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. The question is always, should he be canceled for something that happened 20 plus years ago? When do we move on? You asked the question earlier, Brandi, in regards to being canceled. Is cancel culture a thing? are you ever too big to be canceled? And when, at what point, when you've done the work or you have, said the apologies, do we move on or do we just never? And that's fine if that's what it is. But this seems to stay in the headlines. So nothing better than a good PR conversation around it real quick.
Well, to be fair, I don't think he's ever truly been canceled because let's just be real, the behavior has never stopped. It's always continued. It's always been in the background. Headlines of just poor behavior, confrontations with people. So I'm not surprised that this became something and people are questioning it. We're seeing it since really the start of Me Too. Many artists, many professionals are being canceled because of past behavior, and rightfully so. There hasn't been that accountability. And I think in this case, the reason why it keeps coming up is because there hasn't really been any accountability. I think that we jump to conclusions when we think of redemption that, okay, well, we're going to stop at this moment and then they deserve to get back in our good graces, right? And everyone loves a good redemption story. It sells. It's part of comms. But I think why this continues to be a prevalent issue is because the behavior hasn't really changed in any real significant way. And now people are starting to bring it back up because at this point, why aren't we really canceling him? Or is this a bigger societal issue?
And since you said that, I also wanted to mention, I had lunch with a friend of mine from Poland last week, and she was telling me that they got tickets for him in Poland in 2025. It's already sold out. And I was like, oh, there was no, was there any, and she's in comms. So I was like, there was no backlash about it. No, she was like, no, there's been nothing. They're super excited. So I was like, is it just us and South Africa? What is going on? So I thought it would be great to just kind of get your perspective because it is different in different places. And I guess it's just us because we are also, we have a nominee that has been convicted of doing said things. So I don't know, maybe it is just the United States. Tiff?
First, I want to say that you can't run from your character, right? Like truth always comes to light. People are who they are. That's why there's movements like Me Too. That's why, people get canceled or maybe even stay in the news cycle for these things. Because if there's a lack of accountability and a lack of change in what someone represents and what their brand is, you really can't hide it. You can't cover it up. You can't rebrand out of it completely. There's always going to be the truth there at the end of the day. And so I think that whether or not, Chris Brown has continued to be successful, whether or not his shows sell out, whether or not, some people decide that there is like a, timeline on how long people are allowed to be upset with you for your actions. There's also the truth, and the truth is that he has known abusers. He's been involved in these types of stories, and he has allegedly done many unsavory and really horrible things. So I want to just go ahead and say that I give kudos to anybody who wants to speak out about something that they are against. And there's no, PR sprinkle that you can do to make that completely go away. We can try, his brand at the end of the day, it's still successful. He still has a lot of fans. But I don't think that people can really try to control how long people can be upset about, these actions. He is a grown man. He's a superstar. He's somebody who's been in the public eye since he was like a child. Yeah, exactly. And wow, those are the good old days. Before it got kind of, touchy.
When he wouldn't even kiss anybody on camera?
Yeah.
Those days?
Yeah, very cute when he came out. But now, at this point, it's like this is the stain on his brand that exists. And whether, he's successful in this country, other countries, yeah, if he is or isn't, it's just something that still stands, and people have every right to advocate as they wish to. I'm surprised you don't see it more. But again, it just depends on people's values, what they stand for, and what they decide to mobilize for.
Amore?
Can we bring up the, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can we bring up the fact that this is actually a part of Com's strategy, the fact that he is pivoted to Africa to have this tour and this leg of his tour. The fact that Afrobeat is so popular and it is the wave right now. Okay. So I don't think we can discount or discredit the fact that this is a strategic move. Everyone is upset with me in America because they know my history. In Africa, it's not the same. And in fact, they see a Black man and they see support. And I want to be a part of that. And I want you to be a part of our community. And here you are coming to our community. So clearly you want to be here and you want to support us. And they see it as a reciprocal. So it makes sense that he would pivot to Africa and start to build out more features, more partnerships, more investment there, because he doesn't have kind of the issues that he has in America in coming to Africa. But clearly, it's, as Tiffany mentioned, that stain, it can follow you. And that's kind of where I think that he hasn't truly ever been canceled. That's why it's still kind of there. But could this be the reckoning, the moment, the almost R. Kelly moment where there's this reckoning that people are now going to take it seriously and really start to push for complete, like, no, we're not going to support you anymore. We don't know. But I think this is honestly kind of a start, and it's something that should continue to be monitored. Absolutely.
It's just interesting to me how certain things are looked at internationally. We talked about him. We talked about, obviously, when I talk to people from other countries, how their perception of America having Trump as a candidate is like mind blowing to them. But in the same breath, then you have a South Africa that's like, we don't want what y'all got over there. And they're speaking up about it. So it's just, all of it is interesting. Amore?
Yeah. How is Chris Brown? Is he third? Is he still in his 30s?
I think he's in his 30s.
I'm not sure. But
yeah, 34, 35, something like that.
Yeah.
But I do think the whole cancellation thing, for example, let's say people make mistakes, right? And so let's say that this is something that happened when he was a teenager. At what do sometimes people change? Like at what point do we allow people to kind of redeem themselves? Or, just that's kind of my thing with it, because it was like, what, 20 years ago, maybe? So I would say that, and the fact that he has sold out concerts, I think here in the US and Africa, I believe, maybe people are just not thinking about what happened or what have you, but there's somebody in Africa who is. So I would say also, based on what people are doing, that says a lot about how they feel about the situation. So that's how I'm looking at it. But I also want to say that there's a lot of mistakes that everybody makes, in the past. And what if that's just going to follow you everywhere you go? And like, you stole that lipstick from Walmart 55 years ago. You know what I mean? Although domestic violence is a whole nother thing. But I'm just saying that people, especially as teenagers, they do things, they're in certain situations, and they can change. And I think he's just a phenomenal entertainer. But the fact that he has sold out concerts says how people feel about it. And then also to the point of the woman or the organization that's speaking out in Africa, that should be allowed too as well. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a balance sort of thing. But people buying out the tickets, that says a lot. And so that's just what I think of it. But I do think that you should be able to, you can make mistakes, and I don't think that people should beat you over the head with those.
I do want to point out that he has very recent domestic violence cases.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about that part.
Yes,
I only know about really the Rihanna thing. Yeah, so I'm thinking of the 20 years. Is it 20 years it's been? Or I don't know.
20 years. 2009. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I'm thinking about
that's the well-known one.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that incident because I haven't really been like following Chris Brown a lot, only up until the last 2 or 3 years that he started to, his music seemed like it changed to me and his whole style, and I'm just like, wow. But I would say, that's the only thing that I knew about, but I didn't know about the other incidents that you guys are mentioning. that must have happened.
There's even a documentary. There's even a documentary about his.
So there's a documentary coming out. I think that's why I brought that up, because there's another documentary coming out that's being put on by the guy that did the boy bands documentary.
I
read
with yes, I saw that one. Yes. Lou Pearlman, right?
Yes, Lou Pearlman.
Yep.
So maybe we can reconvene after that.
But what do you think about the Rihanna incident, though? Let's say that was the only thing that happened.
If that was the only thing, I think that at this point, okay, guys, this is something that happened more than 20 years ago.
See, that's how I'm looking at it.
In the behavior. If there was an example of a complete turnaround of the behavior, I think that would be your redemption song, right? That would be where you would get more support in people saying, okay, enough is enough. Now, at this point, you guys are just dragging it on. He made a mistake. He paid for that mistake because he did serve jail time. He did have to do, I want to say, community service, as well as, of course, on the PR side, the apology tour and several different efforts to show that he was a changed person. If all of that happened, right, and there was no other incident after that was consistent with domestic violence, it would be received very differently. But the problem is it hasn't been the only incident. In fact, it's continued to be a problem and a thing that has come up in many, many circles, as well as in the headlines. So I think that's where there is a clear line between, like, who do we not cancel or uncancel, right? It's the person that has shown that, listen, I made a mistake and I want to atone for that. I want to redeem myself. I want to be redeemed. And you do that by your actions and your behaviors. If you're still doing the consistent thing that got you in trouble in the first place, that's not showing change behavior.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah.
Kelly was selling out before he got arrested. Diddy was selling out of his parties before he got arrested. And that still doesn't take away the fact that what they were doing was very problematic and very illegal, right? So I think with this one and the documentary that's coming out, Tonya, I think with the documentary that's going to come out, or has come out, I think this is going to be, I'm sensing that this is going to be at the same level as Surviving R. Kelly. And remember, when it came out, it was intense because at that time, there were many fans that were kind of saying the same thing as you, and same thing I was saying. It's like, I'm gonna bop my R. Kelly music. I hear it, but we don't know, and you really don't know anything. But watching that and hearing those women's stories from their perspective, you couldn't watch that and not be impacted. It was a lot. It was a lot of weight. It was heavy information. It was heavy emotional damage that these women have sustained for years, and to just be neglected. So I think that at that same vein, I think this documentary might carry the same weight with the individuals that are involved. It has the potential to do that. And if so, he should be concerned, genuinely concerned, that this might actually be the time that I actually get canceled, and not, oh, you guys are going to stop talking about me this week and then you're going to be back buying my album next week. No, this might be the one that, okay, enough is enough. We need to see change behavior and change action, not performative nature because you have an album coming out, but real change.
Side note, whenever you stream R. Kelly's music, his abusers get money, so don't feel too bad.
I did not know that. Okay, so then I was streaming.
Tiffany's got the plug. She knows everything.
Yes, Tiffany is the plug. So listen, clearly we can talk about this stuff and so much more for a long time. And I hope those that get a chance to watch and listen to this will take heed to how we process information. But let's hear what you guys have going on in your own organization, what's coming up, and how we can support you.
Sure.
Tiff?
Yeah. So first of all, I just wanted to say that I always love doing these lives with everybody here. We're always trying to put out more audio and video content. But in the meantime, if we're not going live, we do a podcast called Main Character Energy with Tiff Knighten. Check it out. We have some great people on the pod. Some folks that are here have been on the pod, which is awesome. But we're constantly talking about just rewriting your own narrative, taking control, building confidence, and really just having the audacity to go for anything that you want to go for. So tune in. We stream on all platforms, and we come out on Mondays or Thursdays each week.
Awesome. Brandi?
hey, it's always a pleasure to be a part of this and have these conversations. It's so important, and definitely looking forward to the next one for sure. Definitely, you can check us out at Branding PR, all on all major platforms. Also, just started my own podcast, the Branding PR podcast, where we talk to industry professionals and leaders. Yes, and we have deep conversations just like this. So definitely check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And I'll make sure that I put that in the captions. Amore.
Hey, so I'm the only one without a podcast, but that's okay. It's coming soon. This was really awesome. Thank you, ladies, for having me, and for everyone who tuned in and watched. I hope you got something out of it. And to stay connected with me, you can find me on LinkedIn under Amore Philip, or on Instagram at The Iconic Amore. And look out for a whole new Apples and Oranges Public Relations in the first quarter of 2025.
Awesome.
Ooh,
awesome. So really quick, I don't know what you ladies have going on, but I'll be speaking at the Future of Comms in Austin in the next couple of weeks, and Wonder Woman Tech in Long Beach. So I don't know, Tiff, if you want to come back out to the West Coast at the beginning of the year. I do have a couple of yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll see. I'm coming. I'll be there.
Okay.
And you're coming to my city, so we're gonna have to definitely link up in Austin.
Yes, ma'am. So, and I got tickets. So if you guys want to come, I got you. And then I decided, I had a media cohort, young people, business professionals that wanted to learn more about PR, and I went ahead and started Boss Talk. So it's also for young PR professionals, because we all know that when you get out of school, you still don't know how to apply all this stuff. So I've started that group. If there's anyone that needs some extra help with PR, I don't do gatekeeping. Tiff knows, what do you need? Let's make it happen, because I want to see you guys all win. So that's what's going on. If you want any more information, sandandshores.com or Sand and Shores on all social media platforms. And until next time, which I know there will be a next time, and make sure I get all that information and put in captions for you guys so you know where the podcasts are, because you all need some main character energy. We all need main character energy, and we need some Brandi Sims in our life on a regular basis. And now she's giving it to us. So we'll make sure we have all that in the captions. And until next time, y'all, we'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode? And share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR,